So, you've built the C++ Hello World example, but what about multi-file projects? And that's the question we try to answer here. We will cover the installation of the C++ extension, how to build projects with tasks, and the Microsoft Build System extensions. If you have not built the Hello World example, don't worry. As long as you have installed VS Code, that's sufficient for you to follow along with this video. Some of you may have already done this, but first we will install the C++ extension. While that's installing, let's have a look at the extension documentation. There are two key things to note. Firstly, it says that the C++ extension does not provide a compiler or debugger. So if you have not already done so, you will need to run these commands to install Build Essential and the GDB debugger. Now let me draw your attention to this text. It says Visual Studio Code is just an editor and relies on command line tools for development work. So keeping that in mind, let's try to build our project with the newly installed extension. This project has three files, a main, a header file called animal.h, and a source file called animal.cpp. We can see that the C++ extension is working. IntelliSense is showing the available methods in the class. It is also doing smart completions and error checking. Let's move on to the code in the project. This header file declares a class called animal with just a constructor and one method called move. The class implementation just outputs text just to say it was called. Let's compile the project. I'm going to debug with G++. It's no surprise that this fails. The error says that the pre-launch task G++ build active file terminated with exit code -1. Why, you might ask? Well, the main function could not be built because the animal methods were undefined. Now, I know what you're thinking. We've installed the C++ extension. Shouldn't this just work right out of the box? Well, we've installed the bare minimum as we have not installed or used a build tool. For the sake of argument, let's just see what could be done with VS Code with its current configuration. When we tried to run our project, a task.json file was auto-generated for us. It's a file that contains tasks similar to those you might write on a command line. Tasks are, in fact, the interface to your extensions. Let's explore that now. This task says that it is of type CPP build. In other words, it is a C++ extension task. The label says the task builds an active file, i.e. the one we have open in the editor, main.cpp. In other words, it can only build a single file executable. The task uses the G++ compiler, which is the one we want to use, and these are the arguments passed to the compiler. The task sets the current working directory to the active file's location, and GCC is used to pass the output of the task. Clearly, for a single file Hello World project, this task would be ideal, but not for our project. Now imagine if you were on a terminal, how would you compile this project? You would manually compile each file and then link the object files to produce the executable. Let's write some tasks to do just that. First, we turn this task into the linking task. This says, take all the compiled object files and output the executable animal. And this says, this task has two subtasks that will generate the object files. Let's copy this task and create the main subtask. This task will compile main and generate main.o. Let's copy this task and create an animal subtask. This task will compile animal and generate the animal object file. Let's see what now happens when we try to run. Success! This time the executable was generated and the output from the main and the animal class are shown. So, we've shown it's technically possible to build an application with CPP build type tasks, but it's laborious. Ultimately, what we're really doing here is giving you the motivation for selecting a build tool extension. Visual Code has probably already tried to nudge you into this direction, and here suggesting I install the recommended C++ extension pack. Critically, the pack contains the Microsoft CMake Tools. There are two Microsoft Build Tool extensions, CMake Tools and Makefile Tools. CMake is a very popular cross-platform build tool, and according to its documentation, it is the de facto standard. Makefile Tools supports, of course, makefiles, which are used by the Make build tool, which back in the day was the only build tool. Now, of course, there are other build tools, and if an extension isn't available for it, you could use the shell type task. But be aware, it will not be as well integrated into VS Code. So, here's a summary of what we have done. We've demonstrated that without a build tool, building projects in VS Code is possible, but cumbersome. We've explored the use of CPP build type tasks, and finally, we have highlighted the recommended C++ extension pack, CMake Tools.